Hi, welcome to Business Source. Today I'm joined by VP of Sales for FrontSpin, Aaron Browning. Welcome, Aaron. FrontSpin is an SDR platform helping people and organizations, specifically the inside sales departments, to really make more calls and connect with more people. So, Aaron, welcome. Thanks for joining us today on Business Source.
Lee, I appreciate you having me on. I'm really excited to help some people out, share some information, and go from there.
Fantastic. That's really the essence of what Business Source is. It's straight talking, honest, authentic conversations, not interviews with people that I'm interacting with, whether that be clients, friends, partners. I'm just really trying to listen, to what people have been going through really over the last 6 months. Because boy, has it been a bit of a roller coaster ride for everybody. So I'm really excited to hear your side of things and how you've been affected on a personal level, and how FrontSpin as a business has been affected and or pivoted to under the immense strain that we've all been going through. So yeah, let's hear that story.
Yeah, I think it's been a long. Where are we? Are we almost 7 months? Right.
Must
So
be,
for
yeah.
us, it started in mid-March when the lockdown first happened. And it almost feels like I've been in phases of things, right? Where you're tackling it, we're all tackling the adversity head on in the beginning, but then it's become this marathon, which should be
Right.
it's really draining, right? I mean, it's challenging to make sure that you're always trying to stay upbeat, keeping the people around you upbeat, but then also realizing, hey, people deal with this, everybody deals with this in different ways. Um, and so it's, I think more than anything, it's just been how do we kind of, keep it going in a positive way, day in and day out. And I'll share some of the ways that I've done it and how we've done it, with our company.
Definitely. And that marathon analogy, having done 8 half marathons myself, which are challenges enough, that's
Yeah,
far enough for me.
yeah, yeah.
When I think about the 26 miles in a marathon, and it's literally been like that. You're at the start line and someone says, right, I need you to run 26 miles.
Right,
And you get halfway through it and they're like, well, we're kind of changing that, and it's now like 40 miles, and then
right.
now
Yeah,
it's 60 miles, and the goalpost, that end finishing line just keeps moving. So I think that's where you get that demoralization of, oh my goodness, I thought I was halfway there, now we're not.
right.
So a great analogy there.
Yeah, no, you're right. Exactly. You get the moment where it hits you in the face, you go, oh my God, I don't think I can make that finish line today. And then you just go, okay, don't worry about it. Get up tomorrow, and just that whole narrative of keep moving forward. Never go backwards, even if it's not. Maybe I'm not taking a huge step today. Maybe I'm only
Right.
moving an inch, but I'm not going backwards is so important, because then eventually you'll have a day where the sun will come up, and you're like, I can make that. I can make that goal.
Fantastic. Yeah, like that. Yeah. Perhaps I'll use that on the next half marathon I'm running. I'll think of this goal. So, um, from a personal standpoint, then, how did you're cruising along? The business is, let's be honest, you provide this fantastic platform that uh, performs a real key role for a group of people within the sales environment who have the toughest job, right? That
Yeah,
outbound new business sales generation, numbers, 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 it's brutal world out there. So,
yeah,
providing a platform that makes that role easier for them to make the kind of volumes that is expected of them. That it's okay to say that that kind of tech has been more and more sought after, and therefore I'm sure people have been reaching out to you over the last few months. But there you were, FrontSpin. You've got your offices, and you've got your business strategy, and you're hitting numbers. People are calling you, and sales seem to be going all right. And then the
yeah.
handbrake gets slammed on mid-March. What does before look like, and what did those first few months look like for FrontSpin?
Yeah, there was a huge shock, right? It was a shock to everybody around the world, and I think that's what was unique from a sales perspective is understanding that everybody was going through this, and that was the first time that you could make phone calls and realize every call that you made, that person was going through the same thing you were.
Right.
That never had happened before. So as a rep, you had to go, okay, well, how would I, knowing that's the playing field, so to speak, how would I best do my job? And so the first thing we started talking about was empathy, just basic, basic human nature things. If we're all going through this, it was much easier because, like you said, I mean, cold calling is fucking brutal. All
Yeah.
these guys in this inside role, and Lee and I can relate to this. They're all little entrepreneurs. That's what they are, right? They're out there creating something out of nothing in most cases. Yes, some guys are getting inbound leads, but for the most part, you're using FrontSpin to make a lot of outbound interactions. And that means it's cold. That means they've never heard of you. I can't tell you, for people that don't get it, how hard that is to do it
Right.
day in and day out and get rejected constantly. It's not for everybody, right? So if you have any little nugget that can help you break through on a phone call, because I'll tell you, when you're cold calling, the most important is that first kind of 5 to 7 seconds. I make the introduction, Lee. Hi, Lee, this is Aaron Browning from FrontSpin. That next 7 seconds is the hardest part of your job. And if
Right.
you now have an icebreaker that's a universal icebreaker that you can like breathing come out with, it makes your job so much easier. And that's what we got with COVID, is that you can now instantly start talking about that from a human nature perspective. People were going to open up because everybody was scared, right? So they were more likely to take phone calls. So if you did it the right way, you could start having some really engaging conversations that you never had before. Are all those going to lead to deals? No, but now you're doing the right thing as a sales rep. You're becoming likable. You're building connections and relationships, and that's only going to help you in the future. So that was kind of how we pivoted, and we ended up kind of building a great pipeline for that kind of lasted through Q2, which was fantastic. So it was really just kind of recognizing what everybody was going through, and then just being smart and sympathetic to the moment.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, God, I can't imagine. And so, like I say, that empathy, that human element, the helping to build that rapport that says, I'm not just a robot sat here trying to plug away and trying to sell you pens or whatever it is, that you're respectfully selling.
Right.
Um, like I say, that first 7 to 10 seconds, really is probably about 2 or 3 sentences.
Yeah.
That's all you've got to get them um, interested or at least listening to what you've got to say without them saying, look, I just haven't got time for this. So
Yeah, it's
that's
asking that open-ended question so you can get
mm,
them talking. It's usually a question that starts with what, right? Because what's not going to lead to a yes or no is typically what you're trying to do.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, we went through what most people did. There wasn't every kind of budgets froze unless somebody absolutely had to do something for about 2 to 4 weeks, and then it kind of changed. I think about maybe mid-April, where people said, okay, people that could buy were starting to buy, and
right,
then we had a pretty good run until through June through our Q2 calendar. And then it kind of changed again because there was just so much, there's still until today, there's just so much uncertainty
right.
that you just have pockets where nothing's happening. And then a couple days later, it's so unpredictable, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, that talks to that initial shock and horror and panic and headless chicken and those first sort of 2, 3, 4 weeks, and probably um, the the fact that we were like naive, we're like, don't worry, it'll be fine. We'll be back at
Right.
work in a few weeks' time. And of course, that didn't happen. So it's then down to the leadership to say, right, what are we going to do? Are we going to gamble and do nothing and sit on where we are and uh, pray that in 2 or 3 weeks time things are going to go back to normal? I think the smart people said that's not going to happen. This is
Right.
way more serious than we all ever imagined, and therefore it was a different kind of panic. It was how do we adapt? We've got a team of SDRs in an office that we're monitoring. We've got all their machines, their lap PCs here. Now I've got to send them all home to work from home indefinitely. We've got to buy them a laptop. We've got to buy them headsets. What if they've got no internet access?
Yeah.
They may not have mobile phones, and we hope that most people do, but there was a whole sort of hardware tech challenge in making that thing work. But thankfully, with platforms like FrontSpin, the SaaS model means that it doesn't matter what machine they've got within reason, as long as it's sort of within the last sort of 3 years old, your platform's going to work with that, and with headset plugged in, they can go ahead and make those calls. So that must have been reassuring that you'd got some tech here that during this difficult time that you were able to support businesses making that transition from office to basically exclusively remote working.
Yeah, we were lucky, obviously, in how our product is delivered and used. And full disclosure, I would say about 30 to 35% of our users were actually already remote prior to the pandemic. That's just how the companies had built the teams, or the flexibility they'd given their employees because of how you use our platform. So from that perspective, we were pretty lucky. To your point, I can't imagine what it was like for some companies that everything was in the office, right? They didn't even have or sniff out, things that were, done remotely. And now, to your point, every little thing had to be considered about how we're going to get somebody operational from home, all the things that I would have taken for granted. Because as you know, if one of those little things doesn't work right, like the internet or the headset or the computer's not good enough, that person's not productive. And now you're
Right.
losing the productivity of that person. So as a line manager, as a business owner, I mean, I'm pulling out whatever hair I've got left, along with dealing with the virus. So yeah, we were kind of lucky, in that regard.
Fantastic. From a staffing point of view, your own employees, your own sales team, did that change at all? In terms of, were you able to carry on hiring? I'm assuming there was a pause in that initial four
Yeah.
or 6 weeks, but then as that demand started to come back, were you able to reintroduce the hiring, and what did that look like? Because clearly, you would normally interview somebody face to face, get them in an office, give them all the training, there's all your equipment, and away you go. So how did that process change?
Yeah, so for those 2 to 4 weeks, it was just, let's just make sure the world's not ending, right? We're not going to do anything, keep our current customers happy, and we did help out clients. So we had clients that were, severely affected by the virus. So we did whatever we could with their contract or with their spend to try to, make it where we could help them out during that process. But yeah, after the 4 weeks, we were always going to be looking to hire some more marketing people during this year. That's what we knew we were going to be doing. So we went back into that mode, I think, around, I want to say May. Yeah, and the process was different. We have a lot of remote employees, so it wasn't totally foreign, but it was odd to be hiring people in key positions and not seeing them face to face like you normally
Right.
would. Like you normally, once you go through the screening, you have the phone calls and maybe a little bit of Zoom, but then eventually you'd see them face to face and get a feel.
Yeah.
And not having that, it's a little bit, hiring is tough anyway, right? You can have the greatest checklist and you can go through all your process and you're still gonna fucking make mistakes. It's just how it
Right.
is, right? So it made a little bit more nervousness, that's a bad word, but about making the right decision because of having to do so much over Zoom, or anything or whatever you might be using, a GoToMeeting, sorry.
Sure.
But it didn't change or stop us from kind of doing that. And then on the sales side, we pivoted a little bit where we kind of slowed down our lead gen because we wanted to make sure that we're really doing it the right way. Like to the earlier point about being sympathetic in these times, we wanted to make sure we weren't just kind of spraying and praying, and we didn't feel like that was really going to yield anything significant because of what was happening. So we kind of be more strategic on how we did our own outbound. So we kind of did a less is more with that, just to make sure that we were doing it the right way. And so we did that until about June, and then we scaled back up after June once we kind of felt like, okay, the message is still the same. We're just going to kind of lead with a little bit more empathy than we would have before. And maybe we're not going to do as many hardcore numbers. Like, it's not going to be, okay, you got to do X amount of calls today. It's going to be more, I want to have quality conversations, because I
Right.
think
Yeah.
that's way more important now than ever. And let's just build the pipeline. Let's not be so focused on trying to squeeze every customer that a lot of people will do, because I just don't, I have a hard time myself doing that. Can I look at
Mm.
myself in the mirror and really hammer somebody that you typically might see out of salespeople? And I go, I can't do that. I mean, it's not really my way anyway, but everybody's got their own kind of way that they do it in sales. But you still got to be able to close, right? You just have to find a
Yeah.
way that was kind of closing in this environment, which was different than how you might have closed in March. I don't care who you talk to, it's different. And if you weren't adjusting, then you're just offending people. And people want to work, I keep saying it, I won't stop saying it. People want to work with people that they like. And so I think you kind of had to be smart about what your message was, and then ultimately how you attracted client.
Yeah. What I heard within there was something that I'm hugely passionate about, and that is the looking after your existing clients. Yeah, I've mentioned this on previous podcasts. Don't want to go over too much, but this whole concept of 8 to 10x spend on new business acquisition versus messaging to your existing clients is just absolute insanity in my book. So it's great to hear that your immediate focus was about your existing clients, and okay, we can say you want to try and protect as much revenue as possible, but it's about how you go about doing that, and in a respectful way, reaching out to your clients saying, we're here to help. How can we help you? What do you need from us in order to keep your business going? Do you need deferred invoicing, for 2 or 3 months, payment holidays, that kind of thing? Do you need to scale the number of users back? Being flexible and being listening to what their individual needs are, because yes, we've all got the underlying, right, we've all got to go work from home, but we've all got many other factors going on, and our businesses are all different, our industries are different, and products different. So it's tailoring that conversation with them so you're really in tune, absolutely aligned with the individual challenges of that client, because ultimately they're the ones that have been giving you money so far.
Right.
They deserve that respect, right?
Yeah.
These businesses and adverts and marketing I've seen that are out there on TV and on the internet, which is this deal for new business, this deal for new business, this deal for new business. I'm actually over it. I'm overhearing all of that, and I'm more inclined not to go to those companies in the future. What I want to hear on all those adverts is, this is what we're doing for you, our existing customers.
Right.
If you've got problems, phone us, email us, get on WhatsApp, get on our forums, whatever, reassuring clients that you're still there doing business, you're there to support them, you're there to listen, and do whatever you can to help support them. Over here in the UK, it feels like only in the last sort of month or two have we started to hear that change in the messaging, from companies doing advertising. So which is really weird, because you, everyone went through the same thing. It was all shock, panic, horror. People needed reassurance. You were getting no reassurance from the governments and World
Right.
Health Authority and all the rest of it, right? You would like to think you can get some reassurances from your suppliers that we're here to help. So
Yeah.
I don't know what you're finding in the US in terms of messaging from the bigger companies over there.
But I could tell you in the first, I guess, 2 to 4 weeks, you pretty much had to have your CEO release some kind of a statement to make sure that, well, one, that you understood everybody's challenges, but to your point, that you were still going to be here to be in business, because that's how much everybody was worried. You didn't know how big the hole was going to be and who was not going to be able to turn the lights on, right? So to
Mm.
your point, you had to make sure everybody knew in your client base that you were going to be here, the lights were going to be on, the service is still going to work, right? So that was kind of the first step. And then I think we saw, at least here in the States, I think we saw a lot of companies be pretty sympathetic to their clients about what they could be going through, trying to give them breaks on the payments or on their contracts. So I heard nothing but good stories. I mean, there was probably a few that weren't great, but for the most part, I think in general, it was all pretty positive from the people that I talked to about how their vendors are trying to help out.
Fantastic. Um, from a competitor standpoint, you know, anyone says we haven't got a competitor is always lying. There's always at least one competitor out there. Did you see any impact on your business from competitors during that time? How did that landscape look for you?
Well, we're in a ridiculously, I mean, it's easily the most competitive job I've been in technology. So it's not like it could get any harder than it was in our
Right.
world. We just have so many players in the space, and we have real big players that have raised a lot of money that creates a lot of noise. And I think they had their own challenges as well. I think one of our competitors decided to take the choice of raising more money instead of laying off, and then the other one laid off, right? So
Right.
they kind of both took two different tracks, so they weren't unaffected. And I don't know that it made it any different for us. I think there might have been a few opportunities I can point to where I feel like maybe from a pricing perspective, our competitors made an adjustment to try to acquire clients from us. But unfortunately, because it's already so uber competitive for us,
Right.
it didn't make a huge dent or huge change.
On a personal level, then, what I've really enjoyed with this business source is hearing people sharing what you've done to stay sane, stay
Yeah.
sharp, stay motivated, stay fit and healthy. So, what did Aaron Browning's world look like when you started to have to work from home? What sort of tips and tricks did can you share with people that you did?
Yeah, I could tell you once again, I got pretty lucky. So a little over 2 years ago, I decided that I was going to stop drinking. And this isn't a story about, some significant. I mean, I was a social drinker. I mean, I always have been. I mean, that's really it. At the end of the day, I'm doing some glasses of wine and everything else, and it just started to add up. And I kind of felt like I wasn't the best version of myself that I should be. And this kind of goes back to how competitive our space was
Right.
or is. And I felt like I needed to maximize every minute of every day, and waking up and not feeling perfect wasn't going to work anymore. And so I figured, you know what, maybe I should, just stop drinking altogether and see if that moves the needle a little bit. Cause I was just looking
Mm.
for incremental wins, right? And after 2 months, I'm like, you know what, this is working for me. I had a few other things happen with some personal things, and it made me more committed. And so here I am over 2 years now, and I haven't had any alcohol for over 2 years. And then
Wow.
also because I felt so good now, Lee, all the time, I'm like, okay, what else? What else can I stop doing? And so now I'm a pescatarian. So I don't eat any meat. All I eat is fish and dairy, and I don't even drink coffee anymore. So I've taken all these things away, and it's just made me almost superhuman. So when the pandemic hit, I can tell you honestly, Lee, if I was still drinking, I mean, my
Yeah.
half bottle of wine would have been a bottle and a half. I mean, I would have been bad, right? Because there wouldn't have been anything else to do. And I think in California, they say that liquor consumption went up like 40%. Makes total sense. I would have
Yeah.
been that person. And so that would have just been awful for me. So I was pretty lucky prior to coming in that I already kind of rebuilt myself a little bit. So that was nice. And what I started to do, because there was nothing else you could do, to your point, I started walking. And now I'm walking, and I live in Northern California, so I'm really lucky. It's pretty much 70 and partly
Yes.
cloudy all the
Yeah.
time, right?
Great.
And I start now seeing neighbors that I've never seen before. I see parts of my neighborhood I didn't see before, and I started averaging like 10 miles a day. like 5 miles in the
You used to
morning,
just
five,
jump in your car, right, and go to the store, go to the bar, go to
right?
work, and you don't see your neighbors, right? Even though that it's right there, and or the stories I've heard, I live in a road here where there's four houses. I mean, four. Only
Yeah,
four households to get to know. And when we moved in, the next door neighbors had been here 7 years. The other two had been here 10 years, and they'd barely spoken.
I know, that's crazy, right? It
Barely
seems
spoken.
nuts thinking about it. Yeah,
So
yeah,
I introduced a drinks on the drive called Driveway Inn, like the name of a
nice.
pub,
Yeah,
where we'd meet out on the driveway, socially distanced, and just have a drink, whether it be
yeah,
alcoholic or non-alcoholic. So, wow, I mean, so you must be feeling great. I mean, you're detoxing your body from all that
yeah.
uh, caffeine, from all that red meat, and obviously the alcohol. So you're already feeling nice and sharp and alert and fresh, and your senses are probably far more heightened now than they were before.
Yeah.
Then you're going out there with all that newfound fresh energy and really smelling the roses, right? You're
Right.
seeing life, out there. So that's a really strong story there, Aaron.
Oh,
Something
and
which,
it'll lead me into one of the books and one of my goals, one of my bucket list things as we start talking this through about how all this walking led me to believe or led me to think about how far I can take the walking. And so one of the books I read during the pandemic is called Wild, just WILD, written by Cheryl Strayed. And she went through a bunch of things in life really early, lost her mother, who was like her best friend. Um, and she was in her 20s and she decided to walk the Pacific Crest Trail. So there's a trail that goes from Canada down to Mexico. It's
right,
basically a hiking trail that was, commissioned back in, I don't know if they started doing it in the 60s, I can't remember. And her story, and she only walked like a third of it, but she was basically out there for like 100 days. And so her story it's really inspiring. It's a great read. It's not just about the hike, it's about her writing ability and her story, which was great. But as I read it, I go, you know what? I'm doing it. I'm going to walk the Pacific Crest Trail. So I'm going to do the entire thing. I probably won't be able to do it till maybe next summer, but probably not till the summer of 2022. And
right.
it's going to be 100+ day adventure. It's 2,600 miles. It's something I have to do now. As I was walking and I was reading her book and I'm like, I'm doing this. I mean, it was just like something I felt like was destiny for me to do.
Dude, you're almost signing me up to this thing now. I'm feeling so inspired and motivated by that, and I'm already visualizing that journey for you, and the slight, so the path that you are going to be walking, things that you're going to be seeing and smelling and
Yeah.
drinking and touching and eating along the way. I mean, you absolutely have to write a book along the way. Keeping a diary so that you can really share that with the world.
Yeah, and I'm
Speaking of
so
books,
I'm so uber competitive. And when I found out that only 8,000 people have actually ever completed it completely, I'm like, okay, I got to do it now. I mean, that's a small enough number that I want to be part of that number. But I'm a nature guy. I'm a beach guy. I'm a guy who loves being outside and less is more type of thing for me.
fantastic. Finally, I always ask my guests to share a book. You've already done one there with Wild. From a business book perspective, this is Business Source. We're trying to share reads that our viewers and listeners can get their heads into that might just give them at least one tidbit to help them along their way. The book I'd like to share today is Predictable Revenue. Been around for
Ah,
quite a while now.
yes.
Aaron Ross, Marylou, Tyler.
Yeah.
This I'm sure has been read by your guys because this speaks around how Salesforce.com, which is what our business is centered around, changed the way they operated and introduced the SDR model.
Yeah.
So that's a fantastic book which I recommend. From your side, what book do you want to share with the viewers and listeners?
Yeah, in fact, I had it in front of me. It's called Buy Then Build. I forgot the author. I should grab it, but you can Google it. It's a great book for entrepreneurs. That's something that Lee and I are really close to. So if you feel like you've got that bug, Because if you got the entrepreneurial bug, you cannot take it out. It will never go away. It's a scratch. It's an itch that you're going to have to scratch. You're going to have to deal
Right.
with it. Either you have it or you don't. It's like they say about racing or anything else. If it's in you, you're going to have to deal with it. And so if you ever feel like, hey, you're destined to run a company, you want to run a company, buy then build will give you a good path on how you can acquire a company, without having to start from scratch. So instead of taking that really high risk
Yeah.
startup, which we know that the success rate is so low, the buy then build is more trying to find a company that is in this certain range that you can purchase without a lot of capital, and then you can build it from there. So kind of take the risk out. So really good book.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a good one because quite often, obviously you hear about all these uber rich guys that go in and turn around businesses. But the likes of you and I, there's nothing stopping us doing it. We have the experience. We've run businesses. We've worked with enough organizations. We've helped enough organizations where you can sort of recognize a great bit of tech that's just not being
Right.
deployed or delivered or marketed or sold in the right way, that you can go in and really sort of take it to that next level. So fantastic.
Yeah, and I would say one more thing on that. If
Mm.
you're getting frustrated that you feel like you can't work for anybody, like you can't have a boss, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with you, right? That's actually
Yeah,
a good trait to have. So don't dismiss that, right? If you feel like that's because that's how it's been for me most of the time is not that I have to be that. It's more that's what I want to do. I want to be that. That's what drives me. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. And don't ignore that. If you're that way, just pursue it.
but as
Just
a
be
disclaimer
aware.
there.
It's not about the money, right? I mean, yes, we all want to earn a living, but being an
Right,
entrepreneur running something isn't about the money. If it is, you're going to be unhappy when you get that money, I could tell you. But if
right.
you want to own something and you want to be the driver, that's okay. Go ahead, pursue it.
Sure. Clearly, a disclaimer on there that we're not advocating everybody quits their job.
No,
It's a
no,
damn sight easier to
yes,
achieve that dream of becoming an entrepreneur whilst you're being employed by somebody else. So you've got the safety net of a paycheck
yes,
until such time that the overlap becomes too great that you can then put yourself into that business full time. So
good point.
yeah. Aaron, fantastic. Thanks so much. Really enjoyed chatting with you. I'm confident that our viewers and listeners are going to get some great tidbits from this. Best of luck, my friend. Appreciate everything you're doing,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
hope things go well for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. I appreciate it. Next time you guys got to get Lee to talk about all his golf knowledge, right? They'd love to hear it. They don't know. Lee's got some great stories about caddying that I think everybody needs to hear. So,
Yeah, one time maybe, one time.
yeah. All right,
Appreciate it,
man.
Aaron.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Lee.